All right, Chris Popper here in Bangor. I'm joined by Matt Haney and Dr. Marc Gousse down in Bar Harbor. And gentlemen, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving. We are hearing stories about the Delta variant and widespread transmission, especially as the holidays approach. I know that you guys are doing everything possible to mitigate that, what with offering pool testing at the schools, the widespread mandatory use of masks in schools. But with the holidays, there's a time off, and we want to keep everyone safe. So, Matt, I guess let's throw it over to you first. And what advice do you have to offer? And obviously, whatever advice you're offering goes for not only the high schools, but the elementary schools as well.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Chris. I want to talk a little bit about two different kinds of safety. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is COVID safety. And maybe we can come back to the emotional part later on. But as far as COVID safety goes, we know that the time of year is upon us where people are moving indoors. A lot of times when people get together, up until now, it can be outside, and people are going to start traveling to see family. And kind of last year, we were in a situation where state borders were closed. There was all sorts of restrictions on that type of travel, and that's not the circumstance we're in now. And I don't think, and Marc, I guess you can disagree with me if you'd like, but I don't think we're asking anybody not to go see their families. I think what we're asking is for people to do the best that they can do to help protect themselves, and then as a result, protect our school community from a larger outbreak. I continue to believe that being in school is actually the most COVID safe place for people to be. And as we go into these vacation periods, students and adults are not in school. So we just really ask people to have conversations with the people they're going to visit about what the expectations, what the norms are going to be for wearing masks when you're together, or talking about who has a vaccination, who doesn't, and how to go about that. Having those sometimes awkward but really important conversations with people. How are we going to do this? What's your comfort level? So when we return to school, both after Thanksgiving and then after our winter break in December, that we can continue to mitigate and manage schools so that they can be open, especially the younger grades where vaccinations have not yet taken effect. I know they're coming soon, but that's what we really ask is people to just remember that it's a community that needs to take care of itself, and if people can help with that, we can keep our schools open and safe in a lot of ways, including COVID safe.
I know that the school has done a good job in terms of making sure teachers are vaccinated. The percentage is very high amongst all the AOS schools. And for the most part, there's a good amount of students that have been vaccinated that are over 12 years old. But now, Marc, you had mentioned that there was going to be vaccination clinics available. And obviously, these are voluntary. No one's forcing your child to be vaccinated. We strongly recommend it. Can you talk a little bit about how those are happening and when and where?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Again, thanks.
Let me just say that first, this Saturday, MDI Hospital is offering at the Bar Harbor Regency, although they may be all taken right now, the first dose of a widespread clinic for those 5 to 12. Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Chris. Well, again, thanks for the opportunity. And again, just all the pieces Matt just relayed, I'm completely in agreement with Matt. And I would say our elementary colleagues as well. First off, the collaboration with MDI Hospital and the Down East COVID Task Force has been amazing. So we're very fortunate for those resources and others. And yes, we are co-hosting clinics along with the hospital. The information has been released to parents, and so parents for students grades 5 to 11, and I'm glad you said this, it is voluntary. We will not vaccinate any students without parent or guardian permission. That's very important for people to know. And it's there'll be multiple clinics, whether they're hosted within our schools to be able to make that available for families and students, or as you mentioned, out in the community. It's also important for folks to know that if you are 12 or older, there are multiple locations and opportunities to receive a vaccine. I've had my 2 doses. I also had recently my booster. When I went to get my booster, there were no lines. You can pretty much get a booster or a vaccination anywhere, free of charge. I shouldn't say anywhere. At most locations, pharmacies, hospitals, you can get a vaccination and it's free of charge. And let me just emphasize that along with those resources, and they are resources, these are voluntary. These are not mandatory. But I will emphasize that each day that we do this, it's becoming harder and harder and harder to do what the community is asking us to do and what we know is the right thing to do. As Matt said, we know the best place for our kids and for our staff is in school. And we also know it's the safest place. And we also know what works. And I want to be really careful as I say this. I don't want to get into a debate, but we follow the science since day one. There are a lot of scientists and a lot of doctors that are telling us this is what you need to do. And there are, unfortunately, a lot of people that have become sick, and God forbid, people that have lost their lives. I don't find that to be necessary when we have the tools that we know can mitigate this. And it's pretty simple. Wear a mask and vaccinate. The reason we're still doing this, and we're going to be doing this for a while, is because until we get that capacity where collectively we all do those things, and we do them outside of school, as well as we don't have a locus of control outside of school. But when we do those things, we'll have more capacity. And I'll close by saying this, Chris. Matt talked about the physicality of keeping people safe. The emotional drain has been very, very difficult for a lot of people. And it ebbs and flows, but that's draining and that's wearing. But this pandemic is going to be going on for a while through the winter. And we have to recognize that. And we also have to recognize that we know that activities are really important for our kids. They are. They're important for them physically. They're important for them socially, emotionally. But the balance of being able to keep schools open, and our number one priority is teaching and learning, and also hosting activities, not just athletics, but activities for kids. That's a challenge each and every day that we face. And we don't want to be in a position where we cannot offer those. We are offering those, but we don't want to be in a situation where we have to close schools for in-person teaching and learning, not offer activities, not allow spectators to come. We need help. And that help is everybody can make a difference by doing their part. The clinics are important, but all those things I mentioned are important as well.
When we started this back in March of 2020, I mean, it was 2 weeks, we're going to flatten the curve. And no one understands that more than I in terms of people have pandemic fatigue. I mean, people are tired of talking about this. They're tired of listening to this. It's affected people's financially, mentally, emotionally, and as you mentioned, there's been a loss of life. But you know, I'm a big advocate of getting vaccinated. I've had my 2. I've had my booster shot. Up until I was 18 years old, I had a deathly fear of needles. You know, I will tell you that don't look. It's a quick little jab. It doesn't hurt. You know, and I'm very proud of those younger kids that are getting vaccinated. I think I don't remember. I mean, it shows you how old I was, but I mean, maybe it was German measles when I was in school and they started widespread vaccination of that. And I remember my parents didn't have me vaccinated at the clinic at school, and I did it privately through my physician, but I think because I was so scared of a needle. And I understand that, and I think we all recognize that. I mean, look, at the age of 60, I still have to get was going to say euthanized. I don't. I have to get tranquilized before I go to the dentist. I mean, but you know, everybody has those fears. Matt, talk a little bit about the emotional impact. And I know that RSU 24 made the decision about taking next week off, and you guys talked about that.
Yeah, we did. And I think we talked about it, and it was a decision that we didn't get really too far down the road. And I think the decision being, well, the reason to take the time off has nothing to do with COVID safety. As I mentioned before, being in school is probably safer than not. But it goes to that fatigue. And so now I kind of just want to be really blunt about what the nature of being in a school right now is. If you look at it from a student perspective, this year looks mostly like a normal year. We're wearing masks and we're having full school days. We're doing most of the things. In the middle of a pandemic that's way worse than it was when we were shut down in March of 2020, and then all of last year when we were doing all sorts of hybrid learning. I don't know about everywhere else, but the pandemic in down East Maine is worse right now than it has been ever. And we have figured out, teachers, educators are really adaptable people. We figured out how to do school under these conditions, and the students are getting a pretty good deal out of this. I'm not saying it's easy for them. I'm not saying it's ideal. There are a lot of people struggling. We are managing to pull off something pretty remarkable. And what you see on the surface is that, but I just am here to say under the surface, people are really struggling to a person. Our educators are struggling. And
it's kind of like duck swimming. I mean, on the surface, it looks really calm, like everybody's just floating along. But underneath that water, those ducks' fins are paddling like crazy.
That's right. They are. And it's only partially COVID related. Like I said, we're pretty adaptable people. We've figured out how to do this. What has been difficult is everyone's emotions are pretty beat up, our own and people in the community. So you start to get, I don't know if you remember, back in 2020, it was firemen and police officers and educators are heroes because you're able to pull this off. Well, I feel like in a lot of eyes, we've become villains now. And that's not all right. Now, it's not okay because of what we're sacrificing for people's children, the children that we love. It's not okay. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think that people should express their frustrations. I think people should express them. I think they should express them directly with us. If they have questions or concerns, please let us know. What I'm asking, if someone would want to help, here are a couple of things that I think would be really helpful. The first thing is, if you hear some sort of a rumor and it doesn't sound right,
let's address it. Let's address it right now.
Yeah.
Is there cat litter in the bathrooms at MDI High School? I mean, this is the most ridiculous thing that I have heard.
Right. And that's utterly ridiculous. And the fact that people would assume that this was true is a symptom of a lack of trust, a lack of faith, a lack of critical thinking. And I'm not trying to be critical here, but that makes no sense at all. And so that's just a microcosm of the problem. There's so little faith in a number of people in what we're doing that would be something that someone would believe. And so it's that type of thing that is wearing the educators down. So
number one, have to address that. I mean, in the course of the day, to have to fight that on social media or in the minds of the community, I mean, that just boggles. I mean, it's like when I said, when I die, it's going to say on my tomb, his head exploded. Because I mean, and those are the kind of things that lead to the explosion.
Right. And so it's just it's a very specific and somewhat disconcerting example, but things like that are happening a lot right now. So number one, if you hear something like that, say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. And let's fact check before we go using Facebook as a place to fact check. That would be one thing, is just trust your gut a little bit. The second thing is there's a lot of negativity out there around educators right now, directed at educators, it is what it is. I also think there's a gigantic silent majority. And I would wish, if I had one wish, is that silent majority would not be so silent. If you're a parent or a community member and you see something that a teacher or an ed tech or a bus driver or anybody does, you're like, wow, that was good. Share that information directly with the individual. Shout that from the mountaintops, right? That's where I think we can really boost this workforce this is unsustainable. We're pulling something off this year that we can't continue to do in the face of all of the currents that are forcing against us. Like, we need that boost of the silent majority to not be silent.
Can I piggyback on that, Chris?
Yeah, please.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything Matt said, and I want to underscore his positive message, but I need to say this for anybody out there that needs to hear this message. It is completely unnecessary and unacceptable at any time to threaten anybody. We want feedback. We want people to reach out. We want to hear the positives. We want to hear the concerns. If somebody has a concern, reach out to the superintendent of schools or to the building principal. But it is unacceptable, and sadly this has happened, where individuals who may not be in agreement or don't like the information or understand or agree with are threatening nurses or people in our schools. That, again, is unnecessary, unacceptable, and I need for people to know that when they cross that line of threatening or using words that could do harm, whether that's physically or emotionally, we will hold people accountable. We will work with public safety collaboratively. That is not a threat. That is just a reality, and there has to be a line of demarcation. You can disagree. It's public education, which is compulsory, but there are things that we're going to do and continue to do to keep our students and our staff safe that are non-negotiable. At the end of the day, we can agree to disagree, but we should not be disagreeable, and we should not do threats. We should not do harm, and I need to underscore that very emphatically.
Matt, amen. My wife's a school teacher. Everybody knows that. She teaches down in RSU 19. There's no doubt that the toll is being taken on our educators. And as you said, it's, when they come home at the end of the day, they are just mentally and physically drained.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
This is an observation. I'm fortunate to my office is adjacent to the high school. I try insofar as possible to be in the school. Our kids and our staff are knocking it out of the park. They are heroes. They're doing a great job. Just an observation. I hope that people that are not in schools each and every day can just take a step back and understand we're all doing the very best we can, but our kids largely seem to be okay. I'm not saying it's perfect. Our kids seem happy. They seem fulfilled. They're in school. We're providing activities. We're doing the best we can. I hope we as adults can recognize that and pull together and continue to maintain the focus of why are we doing this in terms of what is best for kids. It's not about me. It's not about the adults. It's about our kids. And we're not making decisions in a vacuum. I'm not, Matt's not. We have a team. We don't react to things. We respond. We work on multiple levels, multiple platforms. And again, we know a lot more than we did 2 years ago, but we need people to be recognizing that we're not making this up as we go along. We are following protocols and procedures. We're listening. We understand it's hard, but trust is important right now, and doing the right thing is important. And when I say doing the right thing, things that have been medically vetted. We can end this sooner, but if we don't work together, we're going to be doing it a lot longer, and it's a lot more difficult, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I'll close by saying this. Our board has considered considered vaccination mandates and other mandates. I personally don't believe mandates are the way to go. We can look at our data and be really proud of our staff and our students and our communities because they're doing the right thing. Let's all collectively continue to do the right thing without a mandate because we know it's the right thing. And I always believed, and still do, the greatest capacity for accountability comes from within. Do the right thing because we know it's the right thing. We need help, and the community largely has responded in kind, but we need to double down on our efforts going into the holidays. As Matt said, I'm not worried so much about the schools. We have our protocols. We'll continue to follow them. They're safe. It's what we do outside of schools that largely impacts keeping them open and having those activities, which are very important, both physically and mentally for all of us.
Let's talk about people who need assistance. I mean, obviously staff and faculty have the ability to go through employee assistance programs. Matt, if students are feeling emotionally drained by that, what services? I mean, I'm hoping that they all know about it, but just what services can they avail themselves of? Who should they talk to?
Well, the short answer to that question is any adult that they trust. And that's one of the things we're really proud of here at school is get a lot of phone calls in the middle of the day, and that we do work really hard to build relationships with the students. So that the answer to that question might be your advisor, it might be your guidance counselor, it might be the school social worker, it might be the principal or dean of students, or a classroom teacher, or an ed tech, or a parent, or like, if you really need something, say it out loud to an adult that you trust. And most of those adults, certainly the ones who work here in the school, know what to do with that information.
The main thing is to share that information. If you have a concern, voice it to a trusted adult.
Yeah, and I'll yes, that's really the important piece for students. And I'm going to go back to something I said before. You know, when I was pleading for the positive stories to come out, I really do mean, if someone has concerns, whether they're upset about something or worried about something, or we want to hear those too. I've had some really hard conversations on the phone with some people that I appreciate having. I would much rather have someone call me and give me a hard time than just continue to harbor those ill feelings and to share them and to spread them. I really, really appreciate, it's not the funnest part of my day, but I appreciate it when people take the initiative to have those hard conversations with me.
Well, and I guess do it respectfully, not do it at the Hannaford or the Southwest Food Mart in a public setting. I mean, pick up the phone, send an email, do it the right way.
Yeah, and I don't even care if people lose their cool with me, right? That's all right. Like, again, I'd prefer not, but it's okay, right? It's okay. But anyway, my hope is that to go back to your original question, is that the students have someone that they know well enough that they can say, something doesn't feel right, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. At this point, the athletics are starting. I know that the fall play is going on right now. The fall play is masked. There's some reduced capacity, but the frogs are going great. I've heard great reviews. In terms of fall sports, winter sports, the winter sports meetings are happening. We're planning to have a full regular season of winter sports, and people will need to wear masks when they come into the facility, but that's the limit as of right now, barring anything catastrophic changing.
That's right. That's what we're launching off into, and I think we just take it little chunks of time at a time, and we can go from there. So as far as athletics, in particular basketball, which is the one that we have admission for, keep paying attention to how it is that you come to the games, and be understanding that when you come to a game at MDI, it might be different than Ellsworth or Bucksport or GSA or Sumner or anybody else in the area.
I will say, Chris, I will say Bunky and the kids and the coaches, they've done a remarkable job, not just athletics across the board and Matt and the principals, but I want people to know this isn't a blank check. We're moving forward. We want to move forward, but the data and what happens in a community with cases will dictate whether or not we're able to continue these things. And I'm looking at this, and I know Matt is, in a layered approach. First and foremost, we offer the activities to the benefit of our students. Secondary to that, and equally important, is the access for spectators, parents, fans. But if we get to a place where safety is potentially compromised, it's going to be kids first and spectators and others second. And then hopefully we continue. Bunky and his team demonstrated the capacity to safely and successfully hold those activities. But let's be mindful. Many of those were outside, and we're moving into the winter season inside. So again, I would urge us all to double down on our efforts to do the right thing so we can keep going, because these activities, yes, they're important for our kids. They're important for our communities as well.
Amen. And I would just say that being one of 6 in a gym is a very lonely place. So I'd love for everybody to be able to root and cheer on the MDI teams and the other AOS teams. And yeah, my voice carries too much when I'm the only one in the gym, and it's me and the scores table and the teams.
And Chris, before we get too far into it too, and I know we're going to close, but if people, are looking at some of the things that we're going to have in place, they should look beyond MDI. Look at the Cross Center. Look at UNO. Look at colleges and universities. Their requirements are much more stringent. And again, when we go to those venues, their house, their rules. So I think, the analogy I use, Chris, if I'm going to fly on a plane, I can't smoke a cigarette. If I'm going to walk in a store, I have to have a shirt and shoes on. When you go into somebody's house, you've got to follow the rules.
Right. All right. On that note, gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a happy and safe Thanksgiving, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Good blessings your way, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for your support.
Yes, thanks so much. All right.